So our psycho-neuro-endocrin-immunity and the gut. The gut is a huge source of neurotransmitters and cytokines. And it turns out that the microflora, it's not just gut cells that are producing these chemicals. Microflora produce neurotransmitters. Microflora produce cytokines. Microflora are producing serotonin, GABA, dopamine. And they will also impact indirectly the cells producing the serotonin, the GABA, the dopamine, as well as the cytokines. So this is probably a surprise to some of you who aren't aware of that, but this is all pretty new stuff. So this was published in 2009, where they showed that there were obsessive mice. And what do obsessive mice do? Obsessive mice hide their marbles. Right? And it's a repetitive behavior. They're hiding their marbles. Okay, it turns out you can treat obsession in mice with one of two strains of Bacteroides fragilis. You give those mice Bacteroides, their obsession goes away. People are like, what the heck? Are you kidding me? You can get rid of, mouse obsession is something we've been worried about for decades, right? But here's something that you can get rid of with just giving a probiotic. There's another one. Oh, I went too far. Depression and anxiety. So scientists are not proud of these experiments, but I have to tell you that they exist. So this is a famous experiment that was in 2011, and usually one of the ways that you look for depression in an animal is you force them to swim. You put them in a beaker of water, and then you make them swim. And what will happen is, over time, they develop what we call woe. They start going, I'm sure you've done that sometimes too, right? It's called behavioral despair. Give them a lactobacillus probiotic. It increases GABA, and the mice will swim longer, and they won't express woe. When they're tired, they just stop. They don't actually go into this behavioral despair model. So really interesting, again, a probiotic having an effect on a psychological outcome. Here's another one. Campylobacter is administered to rats, and that'll induce anxiety. So if you have Campylobacter and you're a rat in your gut, it'll induce anxiety without an immune response. You don't get IL-1, IL-6, TNF-alpha, you just get anxiety. You can reverse that with Bifidobacterium. And Bifidobacterium is having such a strong effect on different psychological states that it's now actually being called a psychobiotic. So if you want to have an effect on a emotional state, Bifidobacterium tends to be your go-to probiotic. Now, Bifidobacterium, where did we get it? Yeah, from the breast, from the nipple. We got Bifidobacterium from the nipple. And so do we see more depression in children who are not breastfed? That's a correlation. We don't know that that's causation, but it's a strong correlation. So Bifidobacterium can be low in folks who were not breastfed. And Bifidobacterium actually is a probiotic that is out there and available. So if you look at depression in humans, what do you see? Well, you see decreased mitogen-induced lymphocyte proliferation. So depression is going to slow down your lymphocyte proliferation. You see decreased NK activity, and you see impaired humoral activity. So all of your antibody titers wind up being low as well. With depression and anxiety, we've noticed in humans that you put people on an antibiotic, and this is adults, and voila, they're now all of a sudden in a good mood. Crazy. So something microflora-derived could actually have increased their mood. We originally thought that was psychosomatic. We were like, oh, you're just giving them a pill so they think they feel better. But it turns out that Bacteroides can be associated with depression. So if you kill the Bacteroides, the depression goes away. Interesting. It's not every species of Bacteroides. It's just that Bacteroides is one of those species that can overgrow. And that's why some people's poop smell worse than some other people's poop, right? So Bacteroides can overgrow, and then you get different aromas, and you can associate that with depression. I know, as a nerd, as I am, and I have some nerdy students as well, so then we're always like, so when you go into the public restroom and you have those people where their poop really smells, can you assume that they're depressed? Right? And I don't know the answer to that, but it's worth considering, and you're never going to go into a public restroom the same, are you? All right, so let's take healthy volunteers, give them probiotics, and specifically lactobacillus and bifidobacterium for 30 days, and measure what happens with them. Well, these folks didn't have depression, but what we did see is that their stress levels go down, their urinary cortisol goes down, and so you actually, even in a healthy person, a probiotic can decrease stress levels. Now remember, no two people have the same microbiome. So we're giving probiotic products that are different combinations, but thousands of people take the same probiotic, even though no two of them have the same microbiome. Is that a problem? I used to think it was, and now I'm starting to read some studies that suggest that several microbe species can have the same gene functions. So even if you have one probiotic, it can have the same effect in multiple people, even if they don't even contain that strain of bacteria. So you have to actually look at the metabolic function of the probiotic that you're giving, not the name of the probiotic. The name of the probiotic is irrelevant. What that microbe does is very relevant. So if you're going to treat the gut to have an effect on the immune system, on the nervous system, on the endocrine system, you can do it in a variety of ways. As we've discussed, the first way you can do it is with antibiotics. You can also do it with probiotics. Now, here's the interesting thing with probiotics. Probiotics do not stay in the gut, right? If you take probiotics for a week and then stop taking them, and we measure you a week later, there's nothing left. They are not permanent. You have to continue to take them for them to continue to be there. And there's some question about whether they even have to be alive. There have been studies that have been done that actually show dead probiotics have a positive impact as well, probably because they're competing for adhesion with pathogenic strains of microbes. You can also affect the gut by the diet and prebiotics. And so from the talk yesterday with nutrition, you can be having a strong effect on mood with diet. Of course you can. And you can affect the gut with fecal transplant. So fecal transplant is obviously experimental. It's being used mostly for C. difficile. However, there are people who have used it for C. difficile and who have seen huge effects, changes in personality. We also know that with naked mice, so naked mice don't have an immune system. If you give them microflora, naked mice actually have very little microflora as well. If you give them microflora, they all of a sudden start exhibiting social behavior. Before that, they isolate themselves. So kind of interesting.